to those of you who we know because you're here every month, and welcome to those who we don't yet know because you don't always join, or you haven't joined in a long time, or perhaps this is your first time. So to start off with, for those who don't know, my name is Jane Moores from Out of Box Thinking, and I spend most of my time training companies to hire the right people and attract top talent for their teams. And I also really love coaching career builders on how to do their CVs, their LinkedIn profiles, and have the confidence and skills that they need to succeed in interviews. And I have been getting some coaching and training myself from this wonderful man here, young man, Dr. David Jefferies. I was so intrigued by his posts on LinkedIn that I said, David, please can we get together and can you just help me see what I know and what I don't know about advanced interviewing, because it is my absolute passion. So I know that I have been telling people ever since I've been speaking to David, and people are obviously entranced because it's counter fraud strategy that pricks everybody's ears up. But there are lovely skills in there that really help us to interview better, select people better for our teams, and also help people to grow in their careers. So let me jump in. And David, I'm just going to share a couple of words that start off an introduction to you, but I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us during your lunch hour, since it's 12 o'clock in your world. So good day, good day.
Hello.
Hello. And David is a consultant psychologist with over 20 years of experience in financial crime detection, prevention, and investigation. And when I first heard the word deception detection, I thought, oh, that's a very negative term. And surely when we're interviewing people, we're not assuming that they're lying. So we'll go into that a little bit later, because David helped me understand it's not just about intentional lying. There's also a piece about where we don't really know ourselves. But David, before we start with that, please do tell us a little bit about your story and what got you interested in the intriguing world of deception detection.
Oh gosh, how did that start? Rewind the clock back in my TARDIS, back to long before most of you were born, in the 1980s, I guess it was, when I started work for the Ministry of Defence in the UK. And back in those days, I was kind of I suppose you call it a budget person, which is a bean counter. So it was me that said that the army couldn't go out this weekend to play with their tanks because we couldn't afford the petrol, things like that. And all of a sudden, out of the blue from headquarters, came down this missive saying, we've discovered this new thing that we're worried about called fraud. You're the budget people, so we're going to give it to you, which of course in hindsight is completely the wrong people to give it to, because if you're looking after the money, you're not the right people to make sure that the money's being looked after. It's I can bring some Latin into it, quis custodia ipsos custodes, which is basically who watches the watchers, for those that don't know. So all of a sudden we became the fraud experts, and I've always loved number of things. I love police crime dramas and documentaries, always have done. I love puzzles. I'm not talking about the picture puzzles, although I have been known to do them. I like puzzles that are riddles and things like that need solved, things like murder mystery nights, all that sort of thing, and crosswords, cryptic crosswords, all that sort of thing. So to me it was, oh yeah, I'll do this. So we can fast forward again now. Rapidly we had to become experts in the investigation side, the detection side, the prevention side, and also the recovery side. So how to do anything when you've got a new skill, you find some courses to go on. So I started with everything from double entry bookkeeping right up to criminal law studies to find out how you can prove someone's broken the law, that sort of thing. And along the way, on one of the courses I was going on to, somebody who used to work in the Middle East, in Israel, working for Mossad, which is those of you know, is kind of like the Israeli Secret Service, or it was in those days. And he had developed this with a colleague of his, a way of detecting when people are lying by listening to the words they say. He called it SCAN, scientific content analysis. I was then working in the United States for a while, and I came across some FBI guys, ex-FBI as well, who were doing a similar thing in the States. And they were focusing on something they called statement analysis, which is essentially a similar process, but analyzing the words people speak and use and the language. And I'll just briefly go into how it works in a second, but being able to pick up red flags when people are, yes, lying, but also deception in the wider sense. So when I mean deception, I mean they themselves may not want to talk about something, not for nefarious reasons, but because it's sensitive, it's upsetting, it's a part of their life that they not really sort of want to get involved in. And I did that. I also at the same time trained in an interview technique, which is two interview techniques. One's cognitive interviewing technique, which is about how you can get witness statements to, or witnesses to provide much more detailed evidence, if you like, and also something known as the PEACE model, PEACE, which is a model for interviewing, and it was devised by law enforcement for investigative interviews. So when you've got chummy in the cell, as it were, and you read him his rights, and then you start asking questions. It's about how you prepare for, how you execute, and how you evaluate at the end that process. And I can talk about this later if we get some time. But planning and preparation, engage and explain, account and challenge, and then evaluate. So it's a structured process. So I had that, and then somebody came along and said, have you heard about micro expressions? And a guy called Paul Ekman, Dr. Paul Ekman, who spent about 8 years studying facial expressions around the world. So I'm thinking, oh, I can tell lies because I can listen to what they say, and I can interview them and challenge them. And I just got hooked straight away on this, because being a psychologist, how people work is fascinating to me, as it is to everyone, I guess, to some level. And this relies on the fact that we're very bad at hiding our emotions. We can do it, but there's a split second where if something happens, we react. So if something was to go off now, a big explosion somewhere, a bang, or somebody said something really shocking, pretty much everyone in the room here would have a look of surprise. A lot of people were trying to hide that because they want to, for whatever reason. But just for a split second, less than a second, we register an emotion. So I've now got all this stuff going on, and this is where I sort of brought it all together. So my interview techniques, the facial expressions, the micro expressions, and the language analysis throw up red flags on, as Jane said, deception. And again, not necessarily lies. So that's how I got into it. So it's a bit of a long shaggy dog story there, Jane, but
no, I love it. I love how you pulled everything together. And I love that you're sharing that deception, as you say, it's not necessarily something wicked, intentional, only for criminals. It really is also sometimes about someone who's showing up and they can't recognize or don't want to recognize something in themselves that could be holding them back. And I think when we interview people, we also want to make sure that we try and interview the real person as much as possible, so that we're not trying to hire people based on interview performance, but rather look at who the real person is and how they'll be in that role. So for that reason, I think it's a really useful skill. And I know there's so much in there, and it's so interesting. David, I know you've also been doing recent LinkedIn posts on the micro expressions. So can we dive in there first? Please show us the different micro expressions, because as you say, it's a split second. So we need to be watching people's faces. So please show us what we might see and what that would mean.
Yeah, I certainly can. What I can do is I've got a bit of a presentation. So if you let me share my screen.
Yes, I hope I can. Yeah.
I will open this up onto the screen. So let's make that small and get rid of that one, actually. There we go. Sharing my screen. Oh, it's not letting me at the moment.
but not. Okay, let me work on that. I actually thought you could, and I would want you to.
No worries. It says host has disabled participant screen
Oh,
share.
it wasn't on purpose, David. I promise. I really want you to be able to share your screen.
I believe you. You're telling the truth.
Can you see all my micro expressions? So, well, while I'm looking at that, David, maybe you can tell us a little bit around just that caution that I think you made so clear to me around the red flag, that sometimes when we see something, be it a micro expression or be it a way of using language, it's so important, as you say, to not say, oh, that person is lying or deliberately trying to hide something, but to just see it for what it is. So please tell us more about how to view that.
Right. Okay. So a bit of science behind it. When we speak, before I ask a question, we don't generally think about how we're going to answer that. It just happens. So if I was to ask everyone in this room, tell me what you did this morning since you got up to when you dialed into this meeting, everyone without exception would start. They might and ah a couple of times, but they would start speaking. They would say, well, I got up this morning. I was a little bit late. I got up, so I straightened the shower, got dressed, had my breakfast. What did you have for breakfast? I had bacon and eggs. I had a muesli. I had whatever. I didn't have breakfast this morning. And it would just flow naturally. So we don't have to think consciously about the sentences that we construct. So they come from the unconscious mind. Now, supposing you didn't want to tell me something for whatever reason, either you wanted to tell a lie, or you were uncomfortable at talking to something, or I don't really know Jane that well enough to tell her every intimate detail. Whatever the reason is. So let's assume that you don't want to tell, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter, you don't want to say something. So your conscious mind is sitting there going, we can't tell the truth. I can't tell everything. Your unconscious mind can't lie. It just can't. Because your unconscious mind is the part of your brain that makes your heartbeat, your breathing regulated. It controls your blood sugar level. It controls your body temperature and everything. It does all of that automatically. And part of that is where the language is formed, because we react. When we speak, our speak, particularly when we're being questions, it's a reaction. So it's not quite a reflex, but it's heading that way. So what happens is there's a conflict inside the mind. So we have the conscious brain saying, I can't tell the truth, I can't tell the truth. And the unconscious mind saying, I can't tell a lie, I can't tell a lie. It's going to make my body go all funny. It's going to make my heart rate. And my job is to protect the heart. My job is to protect the body. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to increase my heart rate or whatever it's going to do to my metabolism. So in the split second that you react to something, you do two things. First of all, the unconscious mind registers that emotion on your face. So for instance, if I see something scary and I look scared and everyone else in the room notices my scared face, without exception, everyone for a split second will register the fear, the widening of the eyes and the squaring of the mouth and the furrows in the forehead, that all that sort of thing will happen. And then we'll realize there isn't anything and we'll switch it off. So similarly, when we lie, we might feel a bad way. So two things happen. One is we will react to the fact that we're not telling the whole truth. And that can cause all sorts of reactions. So look at that. I can share my screen now. That's fantastic.
Yes, you can.
So I want to share the whole screen. Where are we? Micro expressions. That's the one. So share. Look at that. Fantastic. You can see that the whole thing. Oh, yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we've got this situation where you're going to register, but also what's going on is the brain, when it comes to the verbal responses, the unconscious mind that constructs that sentence will compromise with the conscious mind in that split second, in that gap in between. So for instance, if I thought somebody had been seeing someone else that they shouldn't have been seeing, I'll leave you to fill in the blanks. And I say, tell me what you did when you went away for the weekend last week. And I'll say everything from when you left the office, because I know when they were in the office, everything was good. So they said, well, I left my office I left the office a little bit earlier because I was going away for the weekend. So I left at 4:30. I took the usual underground railway train home, and then I said hi to the missus, jumped in my car, and I drove from, Pretoria to Joburg or something like that, wherever it is, something local. That's probably undrivable, isn't it? I've probably just gone about 200,000 miles or something, but there you go. And then I arrived at the hotel, so I was on time. That I went to reception, the room was ready, so I checked in. I did a credit card swipe. I walked across to the elevator, got in the elevator. I was on the 3rd floor, so my room was about 5-6 rooms down from there. I swiped the card, I opened the door, went into the room, sat on the bed, switched the TV on. I ordered room service, and I'm thinking there's something wrong here, because I've gone from being in my car, I did this, I did that. As soon as I got into the hotel room, I stopped saying I. It became sat on the bed, switched on the TV, ordered room service. And I'm thinking, why are we not an I anymore? And that's because this is a good example. Because my conscious mind can't tell the truth, which was when I was in the hotel room, I was no longer an I was a we. But we can't say we because we're not supposed to be there with someone. And the unconscious mind says, I can't say I because that's going to make me feel bad and get my heart rate going and start sweating and getting all unnecessary. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to construct a sentence without any pronoun in there whatsoever. That's the sort of thing that we're looking for, a red flag. Similarly, if somebody's relating something that happened in the past, allegedly, and they start speaking in the present tense, that indicates that they're thinking on their feet, that they're in the here and now. So when they had been driving their car down the road and they were going to go to wherever it was, they went last week, and then all of a sudden they pulled up at the lights, and there are 3 men standing next to the car. And one of them is pulling out a knife and the other one is opening the car door. I've now gone from talking about the past to now describing it as it's happening. Again, another sort of red flag. Just 2 examples, but those are the sort of things that the brain does. And in the meantime, because I am lying, or I'm withholding something, or I'm being in some way deceptive, the unconscious mind is also doing something else. It's feeling disappointed. So we've got 7 main emotions. So when we do something, when something happens, we feel emotion we don't say, right, that looks like a sad situation, I better feel sad. We see something, it makes us feel sad. We see something, we hear something funny, we laugh. We look at something that's, if you open up your lunchbox and there's a pile of maggots on the top of on your sausages, you automatically, disgust. The lip goes up. So when you're disgusted with anything, it's the same facial expression. So I'm going to briefly look at some of these things, because when we lie, we feel bad about it. We might feel angry with ourselves or the other person because they're asking these questions and you don't want to answer them. We might feel sad because we're lying, and mummy didn't used to like us lying, and we used to feel really bad when mummy caught us lying about eating the biscuits and things like that. So we get all sad and our face takes on that position. Or we might be scared. There might be fear on that. I've just told a lie and I'm going to get found out, and this is going to mean I'm not going to get the job. I'm going to lose my job, or my wife's going to leave me if she finds out I was in a hotel room with someone. Or we might be surprised. There could be all sorts of things. Or contempt. That's a good one, because I think this person opposite me, how dare they? So the lip goes up. I'm contempt. But these micro expressions, I'm not going to tell you the truth. They're a flicker, because our conscious mind says, whoa, can't get the game away. Stop being sneering. Stop looking disgusted. Stop being looking angry or sad. So these expressions come and go in a fraction of a second. And that's why we're looking for these micro expressions. That's what's going on. So I'm not going to do the quiz, but here we go. Let's have a look at it. They're the various expressions that we look at, the 7 basic ones. Most of them are recognizable, particularly if they're macro expressions, particularly if we're having a good time. We see that there is a little trick, though. When you see someone smile, you're looking for the facial extender muscles up here working as well. So it's not just this bit, because we have the genuine smile, which is the whole face, and we have the social smile, which is, oh yes, that's nice, well done. which is almost dismissive in certain circumstances. So it's got to be a good spell. Sadness is a good one. It uses more muscles than any other of the expressions. It's the hardest to fake. So when you see the interviews on TV where, you know, someone's gone missing and you're looking at the stepfather or whatever, and they're pretending to cry and you get dry tears, and you see that sadness and it doesn't work. They do the mouth, but they don't do the rest of the face. It's just too difficult to do. Disgust, we've touched on. Think about stepping in something that a dog left on the pavement. Oh, well, automatically we're doing this, aren't we? We're all doing that now. We're thinking about, oh, that's horrible. Surprise. That's a good one. Surprise is very interesting because surprise is a genuine emotion, doesn't last long anyway. So here's a tip: next Christmas, next birthday, if you buy someone a present and they go, wow, that's the one I've always wanted. If they hold that look of surprise for more than a couple of seconds, I hope you kept the receipt. Okay. Contempt. Yeah, again, this in real life tends to be quite a short one, but there are some people. Watch people on TV, very generally sort of important politically or rich, or, you know, people that believe they've got some kind of they're a class above the rest of us mere mortals. When they speak, sometimes you'll see the lip do that, and it's like, yeah, you're nothing compared with me. And the easiest way to work out what it looks like is to try and think of things yourself when you're doing that. So if you think of disgust, think of something horrible on top of your salad, and oh, you just can't help yourself. It just happens. Anger, yeah, that can last a while, but it can also be fleeting anger, particularly as a micro expression. But that's the drawn mouth and the chin out and that sort of, how dare you? So think about something that makes you angry. Somebody's going to come in and take all your goods away, you know, burgle you or something, or call you something that's not very nice, and you think, how dare. And if you think about something in the past that's happened, feel how your face changes, feel how your expression changes, even your voice changes, because your lips are drawn back. You get that sort of, how dare he do that sort of thing. You've got ventriloquist, isn't it? But your lips are tight with that anger. And fear, which is very similar to surprise. The only difference with fear is it's the mouth shape, and also the eyes of fear are much wider. With surprise, you tend to get just the tops of the whites, whereas with fear, you get the whole whites of the eyes showing. Goodness me. Yeah, that's it. Jane, you're doing really well. You're very good at acting, at being scared.
I'm living myself right into this.
So, yeah, I mean, happiness, yeah, corners of the lips. And don't forget here as well, look for the crow's feet, as I call them. Look for that. If you're going to get a genuine smile, you're going to get the little lines on the sides of the eyes there. What else? In fact, you can animate that as we go. So yeah, the cheeks raised, the crow's feet, things like that, and the lower eyelids as well, straight lower eyelids. So yeah, genuine smile, and the whole face moves, and the little wrinkle around here, the little sort of, yeah, that's it. It's a genuine smile. It really works, as opposed to, yeah, that's right. Yeah, well done, Jane. Very good.
Thank you, David.
Sadness, as I said, the key to that one is the inner corners of the eyebrows. That's very difficult to do yourself. But the mouth, the downturned mouth, the little sort of pout. Think about a little kid who, you know, we've got to leave the seaside now, or you know, we've got to come home from your friends now. It's been a lovely party, and it's that sort of, I don't want to go home, mummy, that sort of thing. So children are very good. If you've got children or grandchildren, or you work with children, watch their reactions, because they don't tend to hide what they feel, particularly the very young ones, and they very, very illustrative. Anger, of course, yeah, those vertical lines. And we are looking at micro expressions, and you see that it'll just be a quick flicker of that, and then it'll relax. So I mustn't show my anger. I've got to be in control. Fear, again, we said that big eyebrows raised and drawn together, and the stare, the real stare, and the open mouth. That's a sort of fear thing. And we've already mentioned disgust, that upper lip, oh, and the wrinkled nose downwards, oh, that's horrible. Oh, cabbage or Brussels sprouts. Yeah, I mean, I love Brussels sprouts. It wouldn't work for me. But think of your worst dish. If you went, somebody took you out to dinner, you're looking for the slap up meal, and you get there, and I don't know, the one thing you can't stand is seafood, or the one thing you can't stand is gravy on something, or whatever it is. And up comes this dish, you're all looking in anticipation. The big dish comes off, and there's your worst dish ever. Oh, and it turns your stomach. You can't help it. You're all doing it now. I can't see all of you, but I know you're all pulling that face right now. Surprise, yeah. Oh, the open mouth. What? But it quickly fades. As I say, if someone says, have you heard, you know what happened to so-and-so last week, don't you? And you know already, you go, oh my God, I never knew. Oh, fake. If it's just a, what? And then of course someone who hadn't heard would then go into inquisitive mode, and then you'd have that sort of questioning face. Or maybe after the shock, what they've done is disgusting. You mean so you would move from the shock onto the actual proper, if you like, the more apposite emotion for that particular sign. And contempt, as I say, just a so if you think about somebody does something really stupid and you look at them, you just automatically go, really? It's going to happen. It might be left or right. People are left-faced and right-faced. I've noticed that because if you look at the lady on the left on that one, it's a wonderful website she does as well. Actually, I shouldn't plug other people's, but she's really good. If I can remember, I'll pop the link into there for it. But the guy in the middle there is obviously sort of right-faced, like I am. It's funny, isn't it? If you're looking at something side on, it's very difficult sometimes, because if you're side on and you see that, you don't know whether it's contempt or whether I've actually disgust, because you can only see one side of the face. So observing these is very, very tricky sometimes. And there's a bonus expression as well. Yep, that, no prizes, but you can have a guess. That's the snarl. Tend to find that with children a lot when they don't want something. It's just sort of an angry disgust at something. And some people do that. Some adults do as well. When something, oh God, you snarl. And there's another one as well. Does anyone know what that expression is? Some people say it's the blank look. Could be. Psychologists have a special, psychologists have a special term for that. It's known as the RBF.
Or indifferent, don't really care.
Yeah.
That's a nice word. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah. Otherwise known as the resting bitch face. Yeah, otherwise known as the resting bitch face, as its name. Yeah, just a couple of extra ones. But yeah, so as I say, with those expressions, that is the window in. Now, as Jane alluded to at the beginning, yes, much of it was developed for things like criminal investigations and that sort of thing. But it occurred to me a long time ago, and a lot of other people, I'm not taking credit for coming up with this idea, but a lot of people just assume because this appears in TV programs like Lie to Me and somebody like NCIS, and I'm trying to think of some of the other crime shows where they say, cracker and things like that. Oh, you can tell he's lying because he scratched his left arm and looked up to the right at the same time. People have the idea that all this is about, catching criminals and stopping serial killers. Obviously, it has its uses there, but there are so many sort of activities and professions and occasions where it can be a much more positive thing, if you like. So those of us that do therapy work or coaching work or counseling work, and you've got a client in front of you and they're telling you this, they're telling you that, but they're giving these little signs off with their language or their expressions, and you're thinking, I'm not getting the full story here. So when they start to tell you about what happened at a certain age, when they start to explain how they feel about something, and you get a micro expression or a change in language, you know that there's something about that that's important. So you make a note in your notes as you're going along, and you might use that later to something to focus on. And you'll find that when you develop the rapport and the relationship with the client, they then become much more open to speaking about it. It can be used in education, with children. When I've done a bit of teaching in the past, you look at the children and you observe their facial expressions and their language, and you can tell what the issue is about a particular subject if you're teaching it. It can tell you things about what's going on at home, for instance. If someone turns up late for school regularly or more than 2 or 3 times, and the teachers, the old-fashioned way was that you're on detention, that's 3 times you're late, off you go. Whereas you say, if you take a different approach and say, is everything okay, etc., etc. I've just noticed that you know, I'm so unlike you, John, that you've rocked in late to class. Is everything all right? And I say, yeah, everything's fine, but they give off a micro expression, you know, everything's not fine. And you can tell from that through their sadness, their anger, or whatever it is they're giving off, that something needs following up. I'll give you a graphic example of that when I was doing some teaching down in London a few years back. And there was a student who'd been in year 7, been absolutely lovely student, you know, really helpful. One of those that you think, I wish I had a class of him, you know, that sort of. And year 8 came, and first half of the term was okay, but by half term, after going back in September, he started coming in late and scruffy and looking a little bit tired, things like that. So, you know, rather than just sort of dish out attention, we've had a little chat with him and listened to him. And it turned out in the end that his father had left, his mother had to go out to work, and that he, in year 8, which is about 12 years old, 13 years old, was having to get his younger siblings ready, give them breakfast, take them to school before he could come to school himself. So that led us to believe that. So that's very positive. And as Jane said, if you're interviewing for a job, or you have a dispute resolution to sort out, you can look at what people are saying, what they're looking at, their expressions that are going on. But, and here's the really big thing you can do. If you're recruiting, if you've got a dispute resolution or an allegation, I've spoken about the spoken word and statement analysis. It's called statement analysis because one of the most powerful applications of it is literally where someone has a written statement, ideally a handwritten statement, so they don't have time to edit and cut and paste, of what it is you want to talk about. So write me 2 sides of A4 on why you think you're suitable for this job, or about your experience, or write down everything from when you first came to blows with this other person right up until when you made the allegation or the complaint, and all the details. And you can then take that away and you can analyze the words in slow time. So you can look for the missing pronouns, the misuse of tense. You can look at the percentage of words, the numbers of words before, during, and after an event, because there is a statistically significant analysis of, say, somebody is reporting a stolen vehicle for insurance. We know we would expect certain approach to that, certain placing of emotions, the certain structure of the report. So you would have so many words before the event, so many words about the event, so many words after the event. Again, a case I worked with an insurance company many years ago. Somebody had a very high performance car which had some really lovely tires on it. I'm not a great car person. I don't know what they were. Really low profile something or other tires that were 10 times what a normal tire would be. Me, I go down and see what the cheapest one they've got, but there you go. And it was this car, and what it transpired was, in the end, that the tires needed replacing, but he didn't want to pay the full price for them. So he claimed that the wheels had been stolen from the car, and he thought he'd get them on the insurance. So he did, as a matter of routine, fill out an insurance claim, as we used to do in the old days, and he'd done it in hand, and he'd done this beautiful description of how he went out that morning, and he took his lovely car, which was a Ferrari Testosterone or whatever it is, and how he'd driven to the shops, and he'd gone into the coffee shop with his wife and his dear little children and everything else, and described it beautifully. And as part of that, he'd said, and the car was fitted with these 135/35 Pirelli low profile super duper, all singing, dancing tires that are incredibly expensive. And he said, and we finished our coffee, and we walked back to the car park, and they'd gone. So I put it, and that was it. The sentence that was about the actual thing, about where all it was they had gone. He didn't even say the word tires. He didn't say my tires. He didn't say my car. He didn't talk about the car. Just they were gone, because that's a non-committal claim. They were gone could apply to anything. All we know is whatever it is, it's a plural. And when we use avoiding or distancing language, we know there's a problem. And this is where it comes in with things like job interviews or coaching and counseling. If people are distancing themselves something, they're telling you something. They say, I don't want to talk about that. So if you ask someone in a recruitment scenario, tell me about this job, and they don't want to talk about it much, first thought is, well, maybe that didn't go too well. But the second one is, supposing at the time they were doing that job, there was something going on in their life that was very uncomfortable or very upsetting. They might be reluctant to talk about it because it's bringing up memories of something else. So it's the context that matters. That's what we're looking for. So yeah, I mean, the written statement is a great way of starting things off. And I would say, not necessarily if you're recruiting for every single person and you're taking on hundreds of people in a week, but if you're recruiting for a particularly sensitive post, maybe it involves a lot of finance, maybe it involves dealing with people in a perhaps an intimate or a personal way, you would want to make sure you got the right person for that, because it could potentially be quite disastrous. So why not introduce a policy of getting them to write a handwritten statement? And you do that, you look at that before you've even met them. So you're not bringing any prejudice into that. It's literally a written statement, and you're looking for any aspect of their background, any aspect of their application that draws you to it. So all of those things and much more. There's so much more to statement analysis in terms of, a simple statement. Bill Clinton. I'm gonna have to talk about Bill Clinton, Jane.
He's your favorite. Go for it, David.
Yeah, Bill Clinton is a great one. Politicians are great for this. There are so many instances of language that they use. So Bill Clinton was being interviewed about an incident involving a certain intern in the White House. There are two things that you can watch out for this. You watch the video. One is at a certain point, he denies something, and then after that starts touching his nose that he didn't do before. Now, inside your nose is erectile tissue, essentially. When you lie, part of what happens is your blood pressure goes up. You start to, and your heart rate increases. So you get an increased blood flow. So as it goes through the nose, your nose starts to sort of just swell slightly. And it can be uncomfortable, so it can start itching. So whoever wrote the story Pinocchio was onto something in that particular one. Your nose doesn't grow as long as Pinocchio's, but so that was one thing. But the other thing was his language, because he was asked if he'd had inappropriate activity in the White House with Monica Lewinsky. His response was, read my lips or something like that. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. So he'd done several things there that would alert us to some deception. As we all know, for those of us that remember it, he was lying. He said I at the start of the sentence, and right at the end of the sentence, he had that woman. Then there was effectively a separate sentence that said Monica Lewinsky. So I and that woman, opposite ends of the sentence. So he's distancing himself from her. He also, in the middle, came up with the phrase sexual relations. Now, in statement analysis, we say there's no such things as synonyms. He came up with that description because to him, he could decide what he considered to be sexual relations, and what happened between him and Miss Lewinsky, in his mind, was not sexual relations. It was something else. Another way of being able to lie, but not tell the truth. Although he was lying, obviously, but he convinced himself that that wasn't a lie, because that wasn't what we did, wasn't sexual relations. It was just something that happened. And the Miss Lewinsky at the end, when he did refer to her, he put her in the next sentence. There was a pause, and it was after the full stop. So that tells us, and of course we know, as you say, the outcome of that. So all of these things that, as I said at the beginning, people are thinking, oh, this is how we catch serial killers. This is how we investigate criminals, etc., etc. It's not specifically for that. This is about reading people. This is about communication. This is about understanding what people may be hiding for all sorts of reasons, some of which perfectly understandable and acceptable and reasonable reasons. If you have a client who's coming to you and they've got some really traumatic issue in the past and they don't want to speak about it, then they're not going to. But they're going to leave little telltale signs that something is amiss. It also means that if we're responding to people, we're listening to what they're saying. If we use their language, their lexicon, their dictionary, we also come across as being more empathy, and I can never say it, having more empathy with that person. Empathetic, yeah. of those words, isn't it? That just for some reason won't work. So yeah, we were going to build up a much stronger working relationship with that person. And in business, in life, relationship is the key to everything, isn't it? Really, if you think about it. No man is an island unto himself. But we have to deal with other people. Isn't it better if we understand that other person better? And we can also use expressions and our body language to make ourselves more approachable to others. So, for instance, when we're talking to someone, we can tilt our head slightly, look inquisitive. It says I'm paying attention. But more than that, what I'm doing is, and watch dogs when they do this, and cats and other mammals. If you turn your head, you tilt your head and you turn that, you're exposing your jugular vein. So on an evolutionary message, that says to the other person, I trust you. I trust you so much that I am revealing this incredible weak spot that you could kill me with one swipe of your sword or your claw. So yeah, as I say, dogs will do that. When dogs trust you, they show that. It's why they roll over when the dog rolls over on its tummy and says, look, it's basically saying, here's my most vital organ. And I'm happy that you can have access to it because it shows you that I think you're amazing. So we can use these, and it works because it works on an unconscious basis. It's good. This is what I quite often say when people say, oh, I can tell this, it's my intuition, or it's my, whatever, it's a gut feeling. I say, statement analysis, micro expressions, that type of thing, all it's doing is it's quantifying and qualifying what gut feeling is, what intuition is. Because what you're doing, if you go to speak to someone and you come away thinking, I don't know what it is about that person, but I don't believe them, or I don't think I can get on with them, or I don't trust them. There's something about them that makes me feel uneasy. If you had videoed and recorded that conversation and we played it back, I guarantee that there would have been micro expressions and language use that was red flags. And what happens is, because you're not consciously attuned to looking for that and listening for that, you don't notice it in your conscious mind, but you'll bet your bottom dollar, pound to a toffee, that your unconscious mind has picked up on that, and that's your gut feeling. And it's a great way of sort of, as I say, quantifying that sort of thing. So I've gone on for a very long time. I'm really conscious.
I love it though, David. I love all your examples and how you make it come alive. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And I love your overarching message, which I think is so important, that when we notice things consciously or unconsciously, when we just get that gut feel that something isn't quite right, that we should not jump to they're lying, that's for sure, conclusion, but rather use it as an indicator to dig deeper and to probe more. And I also like what you said about the beginning of an interview, because I think that's so important. And I also really share that with people, that when we want to build rapport and help someone relax and be themselves, your point about using their language, their jargon, mirroring their body language really helps them to feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's so important.
I mean, there's a question I always ask people when I do my peace interview training, things like that, and my cognitive interview technique. I say, when do most interviews fail? And everyone says, during the question stage, this, that, and the other. Most interviews fail before you go into the room because you've not prepared properly for it. So the planning and preparation, you're absolutely right. What questions I'm going to ask? Are they appropriate? What room are we going to use? How are we going to arrange the chairs? Is there going to be a table there? Will there be water? All those things that you some of which you do because I better put some water in. But what type of interview is it? And what am I trying to get from this interview? So I'm going to interview someone for a new job. Yeah. Okay, what is it you want to find out? Whether they're suitable enough. Okay, so what are your criteria for suitability? And they go, exactly. Okay, so you don't know the criteria, so that means you don't know which questions to ask. Yes. Now, sometimes people just do the same interview and just go on a gut feeling, which can work, but would you want to? Some people, I've been in interviews, I've been the subject in an interview where I've gone in. Now, in an interview, you should only be speaking for about 10 to 20% of the time. I've been in interviews where I've said my name, confirmed my name, started to talk about my background, and immediately the person's chipped in and done most of the talking. And I walk out of there thinking, have they just wasted an hour of my time because they needed to interview 10 people to satisfy the HR rules, and I just happen to be one of the 10. You know, I'm one of the 9.
Well, yeah,
not the
let's
one
hope they if they did a really good job at interviewing themselves, then you would have done well in the interview, vicariously then. So David, something I also, I think we touched on this a little bit when we were talking and in our sessions, is that we have all of these tells, if you like, whether it's body language or use of pronouns, order of events, even the number 3, all of those kinds of things. But sometimes we're interviewing or counseling or coaching people virtually. And then it's harder to see the micro expressions because we might have a Zoom face on, or maybe in real life somebody's had a lot of Botox, so they're not seeing all, it's not everything's working up there. So how can we, what can we use, especially when we're virtual, to be able to get a sense of what is a red flag when it comes to body language or facial expression? Are there particular places we can zoom in on?
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, I have a regular student I'm doing some tutoring with, and every week I get to see that 3 times a week. That's all I see. It doesn't matter because I'm basically going through exam questions with them, so it really doesn't matter. And then you get the older, the ones that are on their iPad, and you see that, don't you, up their nose. When it comes to deception detection, you have to go with what you've got.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it's online, you've still got sound, hopefully, if they don't keep muting themselves or there's issues. So you've still got all of the speech you can listen for. You've only got the face, but sometimes you can see what's going on. So if somebody sits back and we get a self-comforting gesture, and of course, straight here, that's what I'm feeling a bit. So that's not. Why do we do that? Because we're a little bit scared. We're a little bit uncomfortable. When we were a baby, what did mummy do when we felt scared or uncomfortable? She hugged us. So what do we do when we grow up? Hug ourselves, yeah. Or she stroked her hair. So I do that. We do that because mummy used to go, oh, there, that mummy's little brave soldier or daddy's little princess. That's what we do. So we've still got all those, we've still got all those that we can look at. We can't see the legs. So for instance, if you're nervous, you can't see it on here. But at the moment, I'm sort of tapping my foot. My leg is giving it that sort of wobble bit, which is what people do. You can still see if someone's leaning forward. Now, leaning forward, it means I want to go in that direction, doesn't it? I'm happy with this. I'm content, generally speaking. If anybody here has done the what's it called, the test, the lean test, sway test. Anyone's ever done that? When you ask yourself a question and you find yourself leaning forward or leaning back. And if you lean forward, it means that's the way you need to go, because your unconscious mind is saying, oh, I want to go towards that, or oh, back off.
That's interesting.
You see someone do that. Now, if I'm exaggerating it, but you can see them lean back, and that they're a little bit, I don't want to be here. I'm leaning back a bit here. Or, oh wow. I mean, when we did that interview, Jane, when we were doing the training session, and we did that role play session.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the interview, I was sort of like, hello, it's nice to meet you. And then during the interview, I started doing all that when you were getting on that I was going to make sound like I didn't want to talk. Of course, at the end, when you said it's all over, I went, oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. There's a clue in there as well, because what we're looking for are changes.
Yes.
So if you notice when I gave the example in the hotel room, it wasn't the fact they did or did not use a pronoun. It was the fact that they changed from using to not using one. Exactly. I'm leaning forward, I'm leaning back to change. My voice changes, my answers get longer, shorter. So we're looking for a change. And that's one of the obvious things. So when you're online, you might not notice the subtle things going on, but by heavens, you can notice some really big changes in things. Exactly. So I would say horses for courses. When you're online, use the things you can do online. When you're dealing with something that's a written statement, just take it as a written statement. You don't need to. I can give you an analysis, a deception detection analysis on a written statement, and I could tell you what bits to concentrate on without ever even meeting that person or even knowing their name. I would look at the language and use that. So you use what you've got. But if you've got someone in person, you can see the whole body. If they're on the screen, you can only see parts, so you focus on that. You've still got the language. If it's a telephone call, you've only got the language, the live language. If it's really important, this is why I stress and say, if it's really important, you're going to do an interview and you really want it, make it in person. If it's not possible in person, do it online, but make sure it's a Zoom or a Teams, and make sure you've got a good tech so you can see the detail. But do the written statement first as well, because if you can't do it in the room, get something from somewhere else and then find out these bits. And it's, as I say, it's not about, people say deception detection. Oh, you're a lie detector. And sometimes I go, yeah, I'm the human lie detector. It's not about spotting lies. If you find a lie, that's part of it. But deception detection, I wish there was another name for it in many ways.
Yeah.
But it's going to have negative connotations. It's really about understanding other people better. It's about getting behind what they're saying and finding out what they mean or what they're feeling. That's what it's all about. And then that tells you what's going on. As I say, if it says this is an area that's got a red flag for deception in, or if you're in coaching, this is an area that's telling me I need to focus on this particular aspect, because they're telling me through their expressions and through their language that there's a problem with relationships, with a particular relationships in general, or a particular problem that obviously is emanating from the workplace, or the problem is obviously within the home or their childhood or wherever it is. It will tell you where to go, essentially divining for what the true core is, because we all know good therapy, good coaching, good counseling doesn't just treat the symptoms, it finds the cause and it deals with the cause. Because if you treat the symptoms, they're just going to come back and back and back, because the cause is still there, isn't it? So you can alleviate it for weeks, but which is why things like NLP are quite good. And some of the practices with NLP is when you go back to that, but you don't even have to say what it is. You don't have to talk about it. You just say to the client, to the patient, to the whoever, you just say, with that incident in mind, or with the issues that you've highlighted, float above it and look down on, etc. So I never know what that thing is. That could be something really minor, something really awful, but we deal with that. And you find that through the questioning, through the listening, through the watching, to find out where these things happen. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? It takes a lot of training, a lot of hard work.
Exactly. All of this with practice. And I think, as you say, what's really important is that we need to go into whichever session it is, whether it's an interview or a coaching session or whatever it is, with a very clear mindset of what we're looking for. So we're not just going in, for example, with an interview just to find out all of this stuff and we just follow whatever sounds interesting. We really want to be able to find evidence for certain requirements. And I think in that as well, you've spoken about how we really need to look for whether people are answering a question or not. You've spoken about lies of omission, commission, and influence before, as examples of situations where people don't necessarily answer the question that you ask them. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but please briefly explain those, because that's also really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the whole process I liken to buying a car. If I want to buy a new car, or a house, that's even better. So if I go into the estate agents and I say I want to buy a house, please. Well, what sort of house do you want? Don't mind, just want to buy a house. You're probably not going to buy a house because he can't give you the options that are there. You won't get if you go in and say, I want to buy a house, please. What sort of house? It's got to be in this particular road. It's got to have a tree in the front garden, a pond in the back garden. It's got to have 4 bedrooms and 2 studies and a cellar that's been suitable for converting to a cinema. Too prescriptive. So when you're going in to do any deception detection, you want to be the one in the middle. You want to be flexible. You want to be open. You want to let it flow, but you want to have somewhere to go. So you have an idea. So your aim in an interview with a situation is like that house that you want. You want at least so many bedrooms. It would be good if it had a study. It would be even better if it had a cinema in the basement or whatever it is. But let's see what's out there and see what we get back. So it's kind of like that. So if I go in saying, I don't know what I'm just want to get someone in a job, but I don't know, you know, just need someone to do that job. How are you going to know that person is fit for the job? How are you going to know that the house you've just said, yeah, I'll buy that one? How are you going to know that that's going to be suitable when you move in? But on the alternatively, if you're too specific, you've got set questions, and you always ask those set questions every time, you're still not going to get to the bottom of it. So I'd say that's the key. That's the key to it in that instance.
So you're digging deeper to find out what you need and not going deep on everything. But if I ask you a question and I say, David, did you do that? I think one of the things
I would never do that, Joe.
Yes, it's almost, I have to tell you, I was in a conversation with a family member this morning, and he said something and he said, so you can't argue with that. I was like, really? Did you just tell me that I am not allowed to come back with an opinion on what you just said? I feel like I'm so alert to the statements that people share. It's so interesting. So, David, I know we only have about 4 minutes left, and I do want to give anyone a chance who wants to ask a question. So I'll stop the recording so that we can do that. Thank you so much once again. I have loved listening to you on this topic. You really are an expert, and it's so interesting. So thank you once again.